Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, there are warnings that newborns and young children are dying in their dozens every day in Sudan as 5 months of war between rival generals shake the country to its core. Many of the youngest victims of the conflict are falling fatally ill in refugee camps. Also, following the devastating flooding of the Libyan city of Derna, Egypt's also counting its dead. At least 145 of its citizens also lost their lives in the disaster. Many came from the same village. And young Nigerian visionaries pit their wits against each other to come up with new ways of tackling old but ever important problems. You get the lowdown on their tech creations. But first, 5 months of civil war in Sudan have gutted the health system. As well as the thousands killed by fighting, the UN's warned that more than 1,200 under-5s have died of suspected measles and malnutrition in refugee camps. Health workers say that dozens of children are dying every day and are calling for more international support as they struggle to try and help the most vulnerable of the victims of the conflict. Caroline Lambule with more.
Skin on bones. It's a plight affecting more and more children in Sudan, in addition to a number of other diseases, several of which are also preventable.
More than 1,200 refugee children under 5 have died in 9 camps in the period between 15th May and 14th September. This is due to a combination of a suspected measles outbreak and high malnutrition.
The deaths were recorded in Sudan's White Nile state, where thousands of people have sought shelter as fighting rages in the capital and elsewhere between the Sudanese army and the RSF paramilitary group. Many of them were from neighboring Ethiopia and South Sudan. The fighting has also taken a toll on the country's health infrastructure. There have been 56 verified attacks so far on healthcare facilities in Sudan, some of them deadly. About 70 to 80% of hospitals in states affected by the fighting are now out of service. At this refugee camp in the White Nile state, healthcare workers are stretched. Patients come in each day for measles, diarrhea, respiratory tract infections, and increasingly malaria.
For 70,000 people in this camp, we are expected to have 7 primary health care facilities. We only have 1 at the moment, and therefore, additional funding is required.
With no end in sight to the fighting, the UN warned that many more thousands of children, including newborns, could die in the coming months.
The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank have confirmed that they will still be holding their annual meetings in Morocco later this year. This despite the devastating earthquake that struck earlier this month. More than 2,900 people were killed south of Marrakesh, but Moroccan authorities were pushing for the institutions not to cancel the high-profile events. Meanwhile, the cleanup continues. But despite the chaos, there are efforts to offer some kind of stability to some of the displaced children in affected communities, and some were even able to return to school in specially set up tents in Al Haouz province this week. Journalists have been asked to leave, and telephone and internet links to the flood-stricken Libyan city of Derna have been cut. That's followed a day of widespread protests there against authorities, who many blame for having failed to have maintained the dams. Now, it was their breach that caused the worst of the fatal flash floods of September the 10th. Around 4,000 people were killed, including an estimated 400 migrants. At least 145 Egyptians, most of them foreign workers, also lost their lives. Many were from the same small village. That's where our correspondent reports from.
The Goran Hughes family is in mourning. 20-year-old Mohammed died during the deadly flooding that devastated Derna in Libya.
This is a picture of him standing in front of the sea, a souvenir picture. I was in Derna around 6 or 9 months ago. I remember he was sitting with me in the yards. We packed my stuff, my bags, and he said goodbye. Now, I'll never see him again.
Ahmad, the oldest sibling, had to identify the body.
Their names were written on the bodies. Each one of them had a name written on his body, on his feet. By the will of God, even though no one knew whose body it was. They were broken and dead. We saw them broken, deformed, very deformed. I mean, he didn't die like this, but this situation was horrifying.
In the small rural village of Nazlat El Sharif, every family had a relative in Derna. With Egypt's economic crisis, the remittances were a much-needed lifeline. Hamad now has to take care of his nieces and nephews who were orphaned.
Every month he used to send 30 euros, 60 euros. I work in the fields. How can I help? I earn 3 euros a day, which makes a monthly earning of 100 euros. What should I do? What should I do other than feel sad?
To help ease the financial burden, President Sisi promised the equivalent of 3,000 euros for each person who died. But that still does not take away the pain of losing their loved ones in Derna's floodwaters.
Well, Goma, a major city in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, is also in mourning. 3 weeks ago, more than 50 people were shot whilst at a demonstration organised by a religious group. Many survivors say that they don't agree with the official account of what happened and that they're furious about the treatment of those that were killed. Our team reports.
Tears and inconsolable relatives. At this funeral, in the eastern Congolese city of Goma, grief is mixed with anger. On August 30th, soldiers killed at least 57 people in a crackdown on a demonstration against UN peacekeepers. The families were only allowed to access their loved ones' remains a few days ago. By then, some of the bodies were already in an advanced state of decomposition and could not be identified.
The government left our brothers in inhuman conditions. Our brothers were rotting. They weren't in the morgue, but on the sheets. It doesn't honor the memory of our brothers.
In the middle of the night, using their mobile phones as lights, some of the victims' families lower 50 coffins into the earth. There has been no day of national mourning, despite calls from civil society groups for a national acknowledgement of the deaths. The Interior Minister did make an appearance at the ceremony, where, a few hours earlier, he stood before the coffins to pay tribute to those lost.
I would like to point out that there are victims whose families haven't come forward, but whom the government will take care of and bury with dignity. We have discussed and agreed on proceedings with the funerals.
The families of the victims of the massacre hope to find justice in the courts. 6 soldiers from the elite Republican Guard unit, including 2 senior officers, are standing trial in Goma for crimes against humanity and failure to follow orders. Despite the proceedings, the affected families are still wrestling with painful and unanswered questions about why their loved ones were gunned down by those meant to protect them.
Denmark will restart some of the development aid to Niger that was frozen after the coup there in July. Now, there have been concerns that sanctions against the country have hit the poorest the hardest. The impact has also been felt by Nigerian traders who've long depended on their economic links to their neighbour. Our team reports.
Dawano market in Kano, Nigeria is the largest cereal market in Africa. Alhaji Ibrahim has recently rendered 3/4 of his staff redundant. Before the border closure with Niger, some 50 handlers were preparing tons of bags of beans every day. But the measure halved this major trader's business overnight.
Honestly, nobody's happy, neither the suppliers nor the customers. And until we have received any orders, we can't supply goods. And if we don't deliver, there's no profit. So we're all stuck.
West Africa bloc ECOWAS slapped a series of sanctions on Niger following a July 26th coup. Abuchi Ume is a Nigerian wholesaler of household electrical appliances. For over 5 years, more than 40% of his business has been in Chad and Niger. The embargo has had a huge impact on his regional sales. He fears that the standoff between ECOWAS and the junta in Niamey will drag on.
Even though I'm sure we can survive without Niger, but we do better with Niger. Because no business would love to lose 30% of their customer. It's big. It's something that you would not like to lose.
These two trucks have been stuck on the outskirts of Kano for several weeks. The drivers are supposed to deliver their cargo to the south of Niger, in the Zither and Differ regions, mainly non-perishable goods, already paid for by impatient Nigerian customers on the other side of the border.
We are stranded. We are looking for a way to leave, but we can't. So we have no choice but to stay away, because it's better than getting closer to the border where things are worse. So we just stayed close to home.
Nigerians have suffered setbacks, the Naira crisis, then the end of the fuel subsidy, and now the Niger border closure could be the last straw for many traders in Kano, making survival difficult for tens of thousands of small businesses in this economic hub of northern Nigeria.
And finally, young visionaries in Nigeria have been pitting their wits against each other in a bid to come up with new ways of tackling old but ever important problems. Students have been challenged to come up with ethical uses of tech in a way to help their communities. Our team reports.
Focus, meticulous, every detail is carefully studied. This team of young scientists have developed a smart composting system capable of transforming food waste into fertilizer.
Our project is an Arduino-based smart compost system. It was fabricated with a grinding and a mixing machine.
As Nigeria grapples with significant food shortages, the team believes the innovation could have profound implications.
What this project does is that it gets organic waste like our foods, our wasted foods, grass, spoiled yam, all sort of wasted foods.
David Uchendu and his team are part of a new generation of Nigerians who are putting technology at the service of agriculture. A generation brought to light thanks to an annual innovation prize that rewards young scientists.
We have many tech talents that Africa can take advantage of, and our own work is to go and identify them, train them, and put them back into the economy.
This year, David and his team received the prize and a check for 200,000 naira, over $260, and a laptop computer, enough to motivate the winners.
This is an encouragement for us as Kingdom Tech. I will work towards more projects because of this amazing. Like we are happy about it.
Go kids. Well, that is all we have time for Iron Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Till then, take care.